From Ashley's Furniture, Gene Unger joins us. First, some supporters to thank, and thank you for listening. This episode is supported by CCW Digital, leaders responsible for operations, information technology, contact centers, customer care, service, and support are invited to register for a free CCW Digital membership. Membership includes networking with 100,000 plus qualified industry professionals, quarterly executive research reports, product matchmaking, and more. Go to ccwdigital.com to join the community. This episode is also supported by the CCW Conference and Expo. The event will empower you to test, learn, and try the next big thing in customer experience optimization. Are you interested in mining data across touch points for personalized and predictive data? Are you trying to integrate your systems to get a more complete view of the customer? Are you figuring out what innovations to invest in? Chatbots, virtual assistants, AI, VR, biometrics, to name a few? Go to callcenterweek.com to register. Recorded at CX Retail Exchange, Gene Lunger joins us and shares how important it is not only to sell furniture, but manufacture furniture in the United States of America. Noting that the U.S. is overstored, Gene shares that while there is no certainty, furniture is a bit insulated from the greater in-store retail narrative, and notes that Amazon itself is investing in specific physical retail. Amazon is a partner along with other digital players where Gene sees a seamless and frictionless customer experience. He says success leaves clues, so if you are at the top of your own industry, look outside of your industry at those who are extremely talented at what they do. Gene's mantra, for lack of a better word, is network, learn, and replicate. Welcome to CCW Digital on B2B IQ. I'm your host, Seth Adler. Download episodes on ccwdigital.com or through our app in iTunes, within the iTunes podcast app, in Google Play, or wherever you currently get your podcasts. From Ashley's Furniture, Gene Lunger.
So we not only sell stuff, we make stuff, is the abbreviated version of what you just shared with us. Is that fair?
Yes, that's very fair.
Now, it seemed that you had tremendous pride in the fact that you guys are truly a manufacturer as well as a retailer, right? Why is that so central to the Ashley's experience for you?
Well, manufacturing creates wealth. Mm-hmm. So for the communities that are wrapped around our manufacturing facilities, we have 7 in the United States. Mm-hmm. There are 3.5 jobs created for every one of our manufacturing positions. So with 16,000 employees in the United States, 80% of them being manufacturing employees. We know what that does for the local communities, and we are very proud of that.
And I want to thank you as an American for that, because everybody talks about jobs and, you know, usually with a big question mark, and it sounds like we've got an answer, don't we?
So many manufacturing interests have gone overseas because of the level of regulation in America and the difficulty in competing. Mm-hmm. So we still do 60%. We're a blended strategy. We're in Vietnam and China, but 60% of our manufacturing or assembly happens in the United States of America, and that's important to us.
Not to get too far off here, because we're here to talk about customer experience, but just because we are here in the conversation, how are you able to keep 60%? We're told that that's potentially impossible, or what is it that you're doing that is, because these are manufacturing jobs. These are not, sure, of course you've got, I'm sure, service and digital jobs as well. How are you able to do it and keep a bottom line that makes sense?
That's a great question. So utilizing a blended strategy, overseas in Vietnam, we do cut and sew kits. Mm-hmm. So if you were to look at upholstery or leather and say, how can you manufacture that in the United States? You can't. You can assemble it. Mm-hmm. So if you look at the state of Mississippi, Mississippi is loaded with the greatest skill sets in upholstery manufacturing and assembly. Mm-hmm. But instead of having the labor-intensive portion of that done in the United States of America, in Vietnam, we create the patterns, the kits, and then we fly those in, and then they're assembled in the United States utilizing key labor sources. So it's that blended strategy from a cost perspective that makes it work, and just having a strong competency in dealing with the level of regulation in America today.
Got it. So because you have to know what you're doing on that end as well, yes. And that is where we'll end that conversation. We won't go further there, but as far as selling stuff now, you've got stores, and I definitely want to talk about your kind of digital life as well. But as far as the stores are concerned, a fair amount of the session that you gave here at CX Exchange for retail was based around the fact that these are tough days for retail, right? For store.
Yes, very. Mm-hmm. So you see what's happening. I mean, retail is being so disrupted, and America is overstored to a huge degree, where it's outgrown the capacity for the shopper. And as you build these stores, in the absence of traffic, you create a failing business model, and it's an epidemic today.
Mm-hmm. How are you making sure that these are not errors that you make, continue to make, choose one? How are you ahead of that or getting ahead of that?
Well, first of all, there is no certainty.
Okay.
So we appreciate the fact that our products and services, products specifically, we're insulated a little bit from what's happening with commoditization, because people want to touch and feel and lay on the products that they're going to interact with in their homes. Mm-hmm. So it's okay to buy them online if you've experienced them before, but in the absence of that experience, a great example is the fact that Amazon has realized that if they want to sell large ticket items like furniture and appliances successfully, they will need to open stores to do that.
Yeah.
That lets us know that we have a huge advantage over them in two areas, both the fact that we have 700 retail stores and the fact that we have distribution completely figured out in the United States of America. And for a product this is not dropping off a package on your porch.
Right.
These are pieces of furniture that weigh hundreds of pounds. A minor defect can create a no, and the ability to be able to deal with that effectively is currently beyond the means of Amazon or other competitive retailers.
Perfect. So here is, intellectual property that we have that they want that we're going to keep, type of thing.
Yes.
And you're speaking of one of your frenemies. Is
yes.
one of the words you use in the presentation, right?
Yes. So they are a great partner. We love Amazon, and they are open with us. They teach us. We learn from them. And as a retail partner, we sell their furniture, also sell to Wayfair. To be able to interact with these incredibly talented global e-commerce minds has been a huge advantage for us.
And it is. It's the intellectual property that you retain and utilize in understanding what they're doing so that you stay ahead of them, it sounds like, right?
Well, you've heard the saying, keep your friends close,
sure.
Your enemies closer, keep your frenemies right next to you.
Maybe on a piece of Ashley's furniture with you, right?
Yes, that's very true.
So as far as the Amazon Go store, right? So they're realizing that they have to open stores. When you see that, first, have you been yet? If not, what are you learning from them as you continue to do what you do?
Well, the greatest thing we're learning from Amazon is the seamless and frictionless guest experience. Mm-hmm. That if you can go on and pick out anything you want from Amazon and see it, interact with it, and gain recommendations for other products that would be complementary to it, mm-hmm. and then click one button and have it on your porch later that day, that is an experience that everyone who's in large package retail like ours, where you've got substantially sized products, to emulate that in our industry is a compelling challenge, and they are the teachers. And we are our elephant has its trunk wrapped around their tail. Let's put it that way.
Our elephant has its. Take us a level deeper with that thinking. Well, what are you getting at with that?
Well, success leaves clues. Mm-hmm. So you want to find people who, outside of your industry, that are tremendously talented at what they do. You won't find it in your own industry, especially if you're at the top of it. But get outside of your own industry, understand that you can learn from everyone, network and learn and replicate. Success leaves clues.
Got it. And I guess that's how elephants walk with each other as well.
That's very true.
Trunk around the tail.
Yes.
Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey just had their last...
the last event yesterday, yes, that's true.
Are you a fan? Or
I'm a fan of animals.
Newsreader?
I'm a fan of animals, so the disbanding is good for me.
It's welcome.
I think animals belong where they belong, not where we want them, so I'm good with the way it ended.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. We don't necessarily have to have furniture around the animals, I guess, speaking
True.
in your language, right?
True.
But let's understand how this is your language, right? Where are you from originally?
Well, I was born in Chicago, but I've lived in 18 U.S. states, so I'm all over the place, mostly California and Florida.
Okay. Military or corporate?
Now, my father was actually in structural steel. He worked for U.S. Steel, and wherever there was a new project, instead of him flying around and coming home, we moved the family, and as a result of that, got to see a lot of the United States, and that also built in a level of adaptability to me because I started over again many, many times.
And that's how you know how to talk to people.
That may have something to do with it.
Continue to have to introduce. Hi, I'm Gene. I'm the new guy. Hi, I'm Gene. I'm the new guy. Right?
Yes, that's
over
very
and
true.
over again.
Very true.
U.S. Steel ticker symbol X, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
All right.
Yeah.
And this is, going back to American manufacturing, this is one of the storied, companies. It has lore over American history. It feels like you feel that it courses through your veins. Is that fair to say?
That is very true, and significance is understated. So my father was very highly placed within the organization, and as prefab started to replace structural steel, that transformation in American construction standards and techniques and the ability to get buildings up so much faster, it really did revolutionize the construction industry.
How did he feel about that as innovation was happening, maybe not in a way that he welcomed, right?
Well, actually the opposite. So he bent and flexed with it and transformed, and he moved very rapidly into the arms of prefab and did a great job there.
What would you say? It sounds like this is someone that taught you how to be a person, right? Greatest lesson, greatest mindset learning that you took from him, what would you say that is?
Well, there were three things that my father always told me, and they are parables for me. They're just lessons.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them was, if you're going to be a bear, be a grizzly. And what he meant by that was, don't screw around. And if you're really going to go after something and it's important, dominate it.
Mm-hmm.
And he meant that, and he had great examples of that both in his career and I have my own. Mm-hmm. So that was one of them. Another was life is not a bowl of cherries, and that every time I would suffer a crushing defeat, whether it was a breakup from some woman that I was madly in love with, right, or any other what I considered in my younger years to be defeats, he would constantly remind me that it's not supposed to be easy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we all really felt that. You take a look at the recession, and I was in South Florida before the recession. Business down here was so easy to win.
Sure.
And then you take that away, and that's what the industry really is.
Yeah.
And you learn life's not supposed to be that easy.
Yeah.
So you're going to face challenges, and challenges in and of themselves become opportunities.
That's two, I think.
That's
right?
two.
Yeah,
yes.
all right. And the third?
Yes. The other was he really took me out into the mountains, and he taught me to be self-sufficient at an age where most kids are just, playing around the house. But at 8 years old, I was backpacking in the Sierras in California. He taught me how to live out of a backpack, how to not be afraid, how to catch my own food, and just little teeny skills that have translated into really a very broad comfort zone for me. I don't experience fear where other people would experience fear. I experience anticipation and excitement. So he taught me to broaden and to widen and really to almost eliminate the boundaries in my comfort zone at a very, very early age.
So, and it sounds like now that we've said all three informs two almost, because when you said it's not supposed to be easy, I thought to myself, well, I know it's not easy, but I don't understand why it's not supposed to be easy. However, if I had to kind of find my own meat, that would not be easy. And so then I can understand how sustenance life itself should not be easy. Is that basically what it is? That, when you get down to it?
Yeah, it's very true, and you just can't expect things to come to you. And if you wait, you're going to wait a long time.
Sure.
So the emphasis on making it happen for yourself, people watch it happen, people wonder what happened, but people who make it happen generally are going to be out in front of that curve.
Where did you go to school?
I went to college at University of South Carolina.
Gamecocks.
Which was a great school. I went to high school up in Maryland, 2 years of high school in California, 2 years in Maryland, but loved the Gamecocks. I played rugby there, really enjoyed my time there, and that's where I started climbing. I joined the Mountaineering Club, and that led to the many, many climbing years of my life.
Okay. As far as rugby is concerned, you seem like kind of the same size as me, which means that you're not a huge individual. Where were you in the scrum?
I played outside,
okay.
So it's not the size of the dog in the fight, size of the fight in the dog.
There you go.
And I had to make a choice when I graduated. My father said, do you want a college ring or do you want your teeth fixed? I said, I'll take the teeth repair. So I chose dental work, and you don't see the impact on me, but there's lots of wounds all over my body.
Fair enough. And just to give folks a sense, if they have not played rugby or even seen it before, how would you compare it to American football and global football, meaning soccer for us Americans, right?
It's great question. So hand-eye, it's all about the ball. It's very much a ball game, but the ferocity of it in America is interesting.
Yeah.
That's generally dictated because the players grew up playing football,
Right.
not rugby. So regardless of the fact that we don't have any pads on, they still tackle head high with their shoulders at full speed. And that's not really the way the game is designed to be played.
Right.
If you go to Europe and watch, they'll wrap and tackle. It's a different game played in a much more gentlemanly way.
Sure.
I prefer the ferocious way.
Of course. Folks like you and me can't understand diving in soccer when we see that on the global stage, right? You know?
Right.
Well, what are you doing? You didn't get hit there.
Well,
What's-
think back to American basketball also, though.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Lane Beer. Some of these guys who are just experts at taking the plunge, right?
Yeah.
So I played goalie. I did play soccer for a couple of years, and I played goalie, so it would always offend me when people that I would barely touch that were forwards would fall over, and I'd just stand over them glaring at them, but I saw a lot of acting in my time.
Oh, sure. Speaking of acting, as far as rugby is concerned, at least at my university, those guys had the best parties.
There's no doubt about that. The beautiful thing about rugby, and we played some fantastic schools within our region,
Right.
is the level of play on the field is ferocious.
Right.
And so are the parties.
Right.
So the same guy that you're ready to fight and or kill on the field becomes your best friend that night over a keg of beer and a bunch of songs that I choose not to remember.
No, yeah, of course not. I mean, why would you? As far as someone that was at those parties, I wouldn't want to remember that either.
No,
right?
of course not.
But, let's kind of get to the career here. You said mountaineering, but what was the first kind of position that paid you money? What was the first job?
Yeah, actually, I graduated and didn't know what I wanted to do, so I came home to South Florida. My parents lived down here, and I was looking for management trainee positions. I had a marketing degree, so I really had not considered sales. And a little company called Waterbed City that had been in the business since the 70s was here in South Florida. I joined them as a retail sales associate, and my greatest concern was, do I have my next big mountain trip planned?
Got it.
And will I have enough money to take it? So I was literally working to climb for my first many years.
This is the work-life balance that I've been hearing about.
It's the one I'm missing today.
You
Yes, that's
started
true.
this, is what it is, right? You knew this years ago.
I did know that the importance of what I did in my life was more important than my work. But that was before work became play. So now that
Interesting.
work is play,
Yeah.
I find the lines very blurry between what I consider to be work and what I consider to be play, and truly enjoy both of them to the same degree today.
Yeah.
That was not true in my first 10 years in business.
Lee Coulter, who does some work with IEEE, calls it a work-life weave.
Yes.
So wherever you are, be present.
Yes.
And some of this happens on Saturday, and some of that happens on Tuesday.
Yeah, and not to borrow from Confucius, but I eliminate the work. I just think it's about life balance. So there's, physical, emotional, spiritual, certainly professional. But for me, it's really about having all of those pieces in balance, and that is my life balance, because work for me is play. It's not work. I truly enjoy what I do to the same degree that I enjoy working out, paddleboarding, fishing, going anywhere, doing anything. It's all equally enjoyable.
For boomers, for Gen X folks, for people that don't understand what you're talking about and hear about this, but know that they have to be the first person to the office and the last person to leave, and I put "no" in quotation marks. How can someone learn that lesson that literally can't understand what you're saying?
Well, I know I work with millennials, and I've recruited thousands out of colleges over the last 13 years, so I speak millennial, I text really fast. So my message to all millennials that I interact with, because they all talk about work-life balance, we know it's important for them. So my message up front is, if it keeps you from being successful, then you're not creating the model that you want. You put in the work today for what you want. You work for what you want. It's not given to you. So I bake that down to, if you do the hard things, life will be easy. If you do the easy things, life will be hard.
Right.
So initially, your first few years in business, you bring it and compromise and sacrifice what you think you want so that you can earn that later in life and truly be enjoyed when it matters. Don't set yourself up for a life of challenge and difficulty.
So first off, when you write the book, I will pre-order it if you haven't written it already. I would imagine that's something that you got to think about because you've got this. I mean, you're very tweetable, Gene.
I've got a few chapters written.
Yeah, exactly. So going back to you in that same kind of when you were a millennial, if you will, yeah, I got to get to the mountain. But when you were a kind of a sales associate, retail sales associate, when did you realize that you had to bring it, as you say, on the retail floor, right?
Well, that's a great question. So it's funny. My first 90 days working in a store, and this is in a waterbed store in the 80s, so it was pretty laid back, pretty casual, but I was not good at it, and I thought for sure this is not for me. And then literally the switch flicked, and my first year selling waterbeds for this very good company, sold more beds in Florida than Sears and Levitt's combined. But when I figured it out and it became easy and enjoyable, I was number 3 my first year and immediately went into leadership and management following that, so I ran stores.
Sure.
But for me, the catalyst for that is direct-to-consumer selling is the most enjoyable thing in the world. Working directly with the public, with a guest, not in a B2B scenario, but in a direct-to-consumer scenario. I just love people. I love the public. I love the variation. I love meeting new people every day, as would be evidenced by the fact that I met my wife as a customer, the ultimate customer experience.
Indeed. That is, of course, the ultimate customer experience. But you said when you figured it out, and I would love to get to as close to that, kind of moment of enlightenment as we can, when you were, hopefully you remember the moment, but if you don't, just when the conversation turned from I'm bad at this to, oh my God, this is easy and I'm great at it.
Yeah, it's really funny because, selling waterbeds, it doesn't seem that complicated, and it's only as complicated as you make it. So I had a guest that was from the Bahamas, and I spent a lot of time with them. And unfortunately, they were looking at several $1,000s worth of merchandise. I think the sale was about $15,000, and they did not buy.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit disappointed that I'd put that much time into it. I thought they were very close. I knew it was going to be an export, so they didn't have that many choices. The next day, they came back with a bag of cash, and we counted it out. And when they left, they gave my manager an envelope that had inside of it $500 in cash, and it was a reward for the time that I had spent with them, and this was over and above the commissions that I made on the sale. And I remember that day realizing that you get what you put in and you get what you deserve, and the level of the experience I created for them, I think you have to be an entertainer, you have to be fantastic. And if you want to work with people and have them truly remember it as being an incredible experience, you have to understand that you are an entertainer. And the day that clicked for me, that reward itself triggered something in me, and I said, I want more of those.
Yeah, sure. More of those $100 bills, absolutely.
Yes.
But, it kind of all came together. One more, personal story from the front lines because you brought it up. You got to tell us about your wife, and that's it. We got to talk about it, right? Just quickly, if you would.
So it was humorous because I was, at this point in my life, I was my young 30s, like 30 itself, 30, 31, and I was getting ready to sell everything I owned, and I was going to move to Alaska, and in the winter, I was going to work in the fisheries and the canneries, and in the summer, I was going to climb mountains in Alaska. I've been on 2 expeditions there. I love Alaska.
Sure.
So that was my path. And I'm standing in the store one day, and a woman walks in with 2 young kids, and I just remember saying to, we had a rotational system, and I just looked down at my partners there, and I said, I got this one. And I worked with her, and I'll never forget it. And, of course, world's greatest salesman, she bought some merchandise from me.
Right.
And when she left, we had been talking about extreme sports. I had just returned from an Alaska expedition. She was a kung fu master, and we were talking about extreme sports and skydiving. And we said, skydiving's one I always want to do. So when she left, she called me back. She had my business card while she was traveling, and she said, were you serious about wanting to skydive? And I said, I'm deadly serious, no pun intended.
Right.
And she said, well, I'll set it up and I'll get back in touch with you. And 2 weeks later, we went skydiving, and literally, we have not been apart since that day.
That's a heck of a first date, by the way.
It was a great date.
That's amazing.
It was super.
That's amazing. So congratulations on that. Now let's kind of follow your trajectory up through the ranks here. You said, quickly once you realized how good you were, they realized how good you were, and all of a sudden you're managing stores.
Yeah, and it's dangerous too. I don't want to draw any comparisons. You know, the fastest runner is not the track coach, and we've all heard that. It's not necessarily the highest performer, and I never was the highest performer. I was never a number one in sales. I was a number 3. But the focus on teamwork is far more important than the focus on individual greatness. So, you know, the top performers in a company like ours and our $1 million plus writers and the people who earn the most in our business are very, very self-centered, and we want them to be, and that's what makes them great.
Sure.
Leadership, on the other hand, has to learn that people don't work for you, that you work for them, and that servant mentality towards, you know, I'm a teacher, a coach, and a trainer. Although my position and my responsibilities are different than that, what I do is develop people. So that is my singular role.
So the best salesperson, we want to keep that person in sales.
Absolutely.
Right.
And I'll never say that there are not exceptions.
Sure,
so there
of course.
are where the truly extraordinary make a trigger point in their life, something happens, and they decide that they want to teach and grow and do something different. I've certainly seen that happen, but generally speaking, high performers are looking out for number one, and that's them.
Larry Bird was not a very good head coach. Let's just be honest about that, right? And
but he was a tremendous cleaner on the basketball court.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes.
You brought up Bill Lane Beer, so I figured I'd go back in time a little bit with you. So when you realized that you were managing stores, and I would imagine at one point you woke up in the morning and you said, oh boy, I have a job where I have to manage a lot of different things that I can't necessarily directly see. Somebody like you, it seems like, if I can grab this part of the rock, I can get up to the next level. Talk about you with your personality managing kind of this almost mystical haze of network.
Yeah, it's moving targets. So blending what you do for your associates into what you do for your guests. So if you do not put the associate first, you have no right to expect them to treat the guest with an extraordinary level of service. If that's not what they're getting from you, they will not then share that with your external clients. So my focus was on making sure that my constituents, my internal customer, had everything that they needed to be successful, and then I knew that they would cascade that to our external guests. That turned out to be a very powerful and winning formula.
So you're now managing stores, and you figured out how to do it, and the team kind of is digging what you're giving them, and you're obviously digging what they're giving you back. When does Ashley's come into this?
Well, they were in my organization, so we shifted from Waterbed City to City Furniture. We're actually here in South Florida right now, and City Furniture is the regional powerhouse down here on the home furnishing side.
They're huge down here.
They are very, very big and incredibly competent, and they know what they're doing, led by a brilliant guy, Keith Koenig, that has been a part of the organization since the 70s. So as City Furniture grew, they had to make a decision with Ashley, who was a key supplier. Do we want to compete with them, or do we want to be them? So as Ashley was growing the HomeStore model in the early 2000s, Keith made a decision to fly both flags, and that was a brilliant decision. So we became the Ashley licensee in South Florida, and now City Furniture has 11 Ashley home stores here in South Florida, and I ran that division for Keith, so I became very closely connected to the Ashley corporate team, and as of January 1st, 2015, shifted my 28-year allegiance to South Florida and to the City Furniture business model to work for Ashley Corporate in what I could only describe as the Olympics of this industry.
So it was a job you had to take type of thing.
It was, well, there's two perspectives on that. Some people would look and say that, let me take the path of least resistance. I had a great long-term incentive to stay.
Yeah.
I walked away from that. I had incredible ties. My wife's entire life and family are down here. But to be able to play at that level, I feel like I'm far from done in business. I didn't want to take the easy path. I wanted to take the road less traveled, and certainly the more difficult route. And it has been 2.5 years of wild inspiration, and I'm more engaged and energized about business now than I ever have been before in my life.
Gene, it's not supposed to be easy, right?
It's not supposed to.
This is a direct thing here. So the past 2.5 years, how has it been different than what you knew before?
The extraordinary change in scope. So City Furniture, a $350 million a year company, when I was walking away, very, very well established in terms of team and technology. The business that I moved into, Ashley Corporate Retail, had major leadership changes successively. Every time there's a leadership change at the top of the food chain, everything starts over. The new leader brings in a new court. There's tremendous change, very disruptive for the teams, and they went through that in multiple iterations. So I knew that I was leaving a highly sophisticated organization and moving into one that needed that level of process built into it. I knew that there was huge room on the team side, focus on relationships versus just focus on results. So we brought in retail education at an extraordinary level and really focused on making sure our people knew everything they needed to know to be successful and had the incentive structure that would drive them to that level of success and teach them to get there. And then the scope of the business just being billions instead of millions certainly increases, the cost of making an incorrect decision grow exponentially. So you focus much more on the detail to make sure that you are still willing to take chances, but minimize the risk associated with them.
Did your dad ever retire? Will you ever retire? Why and why not?
So my father did retire. He is retired now, and he warned me after 1 year. He said, never do this. He said, your brain will melt. You'll become stupid overnight. He said, don't do it. So I firmly believe I'm in my young 50s right now. I have no intention of ever stopping working. I may make a transition. I may move into the consultancy world. I may do something different with my life. But I will never, ever stop working. I will never, ever stop driving. My retirement plan is to die in a massive avalanche, so that's real easy.
That's amazing. I got 3 final questions for you. I'll tell you what they are. I'll ask you them in order. What has most surprised you at work? What has most surprised you in life? And then on the soundtrack of your life, Gene, 1 track, 1 song that's got to be on there. First things first, what has most surprised you at work along the way?
The most surprising thing that I've experienced in business, and this is 31 years in one industry, is the change in focus. We started off that it was what was right for the industry, then it's what's right for the retailer, and today it's what's right for the customer. And to watch that experience, I mean, that is, you talk about an HBR case study, and to watch the timeline. I've been, in business during a very exciting period of time, and I believe that the most exciting years are in front of us.
Yeah.
So the surprise for me is how the revolution is over, the customer has won. It is all about her, and you give her what she wants, when she wants it, in the way that she chooses to interact, or you lose.
It's a very simple equation, right? There is no algorithm. This is arithmetic, right?
It's very straightforward.
Or it's either arithmetic or subtraction, and you don't want to be on the subtraction side.
Very true.
What's most surprised you in life?
The most surprising thing for me in life is at a relatively young age, I talked about this, my comfort zone physically was huge, and it had no boundaries. But my comfort zone emotionally was much smaller, and I avoided marriage and entangled relationships. I was 33 before I got married, and I'm grateful for that because I think I learned a lot in those years after graduating. And for me, the emotional comfort zone was the most constraining in my life, and to learn to embrace that, to deal with it, and to grow that has been formative for the success of my relationship, and for that and for the patience of the people that I've been involved with in that process. I'm deeply grateful.
It sounds like you were taking the easy way out with the emotions to begin with.
Very much so. Hiding would be an understatement.
We might have that in common in our 20s, but that's another conversation for another time. On the soundtrack of your life, Gene, 1 track, 1 song that's got to be on there.
1 track, 1 song. Well, I've always been I'm a trash can rock guy, so I have huge, depth with Kid Rock and with Eminem, so some trashier music. I would say I'm a huge fan of the Eagles. So I think that I'll go with that Eagles song, running down the road, trying to loosen my load, and just looking at life as a journey and being able to enjoy the experience at various checkpoints along the way. And it has been it's been a wild ride, and to know that it's just getting started is incredibly invigorating.
There you go. Here's to, R.I.P. Glenn Frey, and here's to Joe Walsh, and why not Don Henley too, right?
Yes, that's very good. I love it.
Gene,
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Again, I'm pre-ordering the book right now.
Thanks, Seth. You were very fun to work with. Thank you very much.
And there you have Gene Lunger. If you do the hard things, life will be easy. If you do the easy things, life will be hard. Very simply stated, but there's a lot in there, and that makes a ton of sense. So very much appreciated Gene's perspectives on life and work. Very much appreciate you listening, and stay tuned.